I'm going to take us back in very quick research of like where it all kind of started. I'm sure there were smaller ones before this, but you're back in the 90s, you're on your Game Boy, everything's great, still going to the arcade, and then you're big Nintendo fan, Super Mario Brothers, you love them, and then you heard that there's going to be a live action film of the Super Mario Brothers coming out in 1993. And then it's the most terrifying rendition of a Goomba you've ever seen in your life.
You're listening to Rules of Play, a game development podcast for anyone wanting industry insight, deep dives on games, and casual conversation.
Hello, and welcome to Rules of Play. I'm Matt, and we're starting this episode strong. Today we're going to be on about film adaptations of video games, but first we'll do the round table as always and how we're all feeling. I'm doing pretty good myself, feeling well. A solid day. No new games really so far. Still just playing Hi-Fi Rush, which has been great. Loving it. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. It's been a busy day at work, but all right so far. I haven't actually played a game in a while, so this is the thing when you get into the actual industry, you find you actually almost play less games sometimes. But yeah, no, mainly watching some Last of Us stuff, which we'll get into later. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, I'm all right. I feel like I'm an absolute ball of rage today, and I can't understand why, other than the fact we live in an absolute hell island run by a disgusting government. But other than that, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm pretty good. Work is busy and challenging and all that good stuff. But yeah, we plod on. Haven't really been playing anything other than Hi-Fi Rush. I think there's some new Fortnite quests I need to do.
I did them all yesterday.
So I need to go and do that at some point. But yeah, that's kind of me. How about you, Adam? I'll move on to you. Last but not least.
All right. I smashed the Fortnite quests yesterday. But now I also picked up the Hitman World of Assassinations. So I'm gonna
nice, yeah.
With that.
They collected all. Yeah, they collected
I think it's all 3 games, and there's that new mode as well. I think I can't remember what it's called.
What's the new mode?
Isn't it like Freelancer, and you're in like his hideout, and you go out do contracts in all the maps?
Oh, I didn't know about that. I thought they were just taking Hitman 1, 2, and 3 and going, it's one big game now. It's got a cool new title. I didn't know
they've done that. And I think,
more.
Freelancer, you start, and then you do contracts, get money, buy better weapons, and
sick. Nice. Oh, I'll probably have to. Yeah, I'll probably have to revisit that. I only played a little bit of. I played a lot of the 2016 one, played a bit of the second one, and I didn't touch 3. But I know before this update, 3 pretty much brought in 2 and 1's content anyway. In some kind of way that you had them.
Yeah, kind of made it all up to scratch for like the new features and so like. Yeah, I think like £30 at the moment. I think you might get a discount if you own some of them.
Yeah, I think I'll probably use tracks. Yeah.
So if you didn't play, I just thought if you didn't play like 1 or 2, and you just got into World of Assassination, 1, 2, or 3, and got into World of Assassination, you'd be like, "Oh my god, this game is huge!"
It's huge.
Like, there was so much stuff.
Like it was 20 odd maps.
I mean, those games have always been like big anyway for the individual ones. It's so cool what they're doing with it though, and how they're like keeping it fresh for this same stuff. I mean, they did a very quick VR version of Hitman 3, I think.
Isn't that supposed to be pretty good though?
It is. Yeah. I've not played it. No.
I haven't played it. I've heard good things.
I don't have.
It's wild.
I mean, I don't have a VR headset, but it's included if you get World of Assassination. So I have
really?
It. Yeah.
Oh, that's genius. So it's pretty much everything they've done in the past, 8 years or so, put into one package. That's wild.
Yeah, because from what I know of it, it was like, okay, because it was when they were releasing the package thing before this one, and they were like, oh, okay, we'll just release a VR thing for it. And they just basically like put motion controllers and VR stuff inside of it. And we're like, yep, that's good. Because a lot of it's like, a lot of their mechanics are fairly VR related anyway.
Well, we were just saying, weren't we, before we started recording that, like, you know, Hitman as a game is like, in my opinion anyway, it's inherently slapstick if you play it quote unquote properly. Like, I know you can just go around and be a stealthy guy and just use your kind of wire and shot people, but like if you really engage with the world and the mechanics, like it is super stupid in like the best of ways.
It just
and
reminds
VR
me
as a what not a genre. What's the phrase? VR a platform, tends to be inherently slapstick as well, just because of the way you interact with it. So it should just be the perfect like meeting of worlds almost.
That just reminds me of that video of the guy on the jet ski when you throw the briefcase at him.
Just follows him the whole way. It's so good.
Bring that up too. The best bug in video game history.
It's so fantastic, isn't it?
Unreal, absolute feature, not a bug.
No, 100%. So today's topic, we're going to sort of move into, how video games have moved into modern times with film adaptations and TV adaptations, and we're going to talk about, our thoughts on some of those, and also just sort of the ins and outs of how that's gone about. I think it's an interesting topic, and it's quite topical at the moment. We like to stay topical, maybe. I'm not sure.
Do we?
Yeah, maybe not. So when we're talking about like video game adaptations, it's mainly any character or franchise that was a video game first and then has moved into like film or TV or any kind of like mainly those other types of media, because it was a big thing before. Like it used to be film, you'd make the film and then you'd make a game on that film, but that's just like not a thing anymore, other than a new Avatar game. But I haven't seen a film adaptation of a game in a long time, or a game adaptation of a film. Sorry.
It tended to be like mobile games, like since I'd say 2011 is going to be my date off the top of my head onwards. I think you saw a lot of game adaptations just get put as like mobiles, like shovelware. Like I think we got 3 MCU console games, which is bizarre when you think of it. Like Iron Man 1 had one, Thor had one, Captain America had one, and maybe Iron Man 2. But like it's wild that we live in a world where you didn't get like a Avengers film adaptation unless you went for like the Lego version of it, or you know what I mean. But yeah, it's been a long while since that was the kind of go-to process of you put your film out. If it's in got rough gamification DNA in it, you can then kind of do it. But yeah, it's been a long time since that's happened, like from a huge mainstream point of view.
I wonder if that's like inherently like as we progress as an industry, we've become bigger and more successful, and now like it's the whole thing of the games industry at the moment is I believe the last statistic I saw was that it is bigger than the film, TV, music industry combined.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
But I'm wondering if at the time it was sort of seen by these bigger production companies as like, oh, it's just another, we'll make a film, and that's the main thing we're going to do with the IP, and then we'll do a game adaptation because it's another market.
Yeah, it's not like another resource stream.
Yeah, It's not like no, we want to make which is a lot of them are now. The other way around is like, no, we want to make an experience that is solely for games or solely for film, or if we do adapt them, we want to do it faithfully and properly.
Yeah.
So I guess it must be something to do with that. Yeah.
There's a couple of games I can think of that are coming out that are tied to film franchises, but not necessarily films. Because I think nowadays games are so big, they want to do like a creative license for them themselves. Because there's an Indiana Jones game, probably going to be tied to the new film, and obviously there's a James Bond game coming out, which I think they've already said that they're trying to make their own thing from the franchise. So I don't think direct adaptations really are a thing anymore.
Yeah, it's super interesting how that's like become a thing, and I do think it's like from what you were saying, Jack, where it's like there's definitely this whole thing where films were. I think obviously we're a newer industry as well, and films were this like big blockbuster thing, and then games were arcadey and only for nerds, and that's like definitely gone past that curve, like way past that curve now, and there's definitely like a stigma with games, I think, before that, whereas now it's like they can be. I mean, it's this whole classic argument of games art and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the answer. If you were asking that question yourself and you didn't know the answer is yes. But it's proven ground with that now. So I think it's opened the doors for a lot more of these sort of proper, realistic and good adaptations.
Yeah, I think as well, later kind of off both your points there. Like, if you look at the jump in the past, you know, I'd argue it was probably when like mocap really kind of came in, and like that jump from being able to capture like, you know, really realistic filmic performances and stuff. And I mean, I know mocap was used like back in like Metal Gear Solid 2 and stuff like that. But even if you go back to Metal Gear Solid 1, that for a lot of people was like the game that made go, oh shit, like games can be action movies now and like spy thrillers and stuff. And I think, you know, if you keep like taking what Metal Gear Solid did and look at Metal Gear Solid 2 and the games that started, you saw creators start pushing into those areas of becoming like directors and stuff. And I think we spoke about it in the last episode a little bit of that has become a bit of like the video game process now, that if you are making a big budget, tend to be narrative driven game, there is a lot of like techniques that are adapted from like theater and movie to how you actually direct your actors. Like having actors involved is a big thing, because Game Spheres it was just voice actors, and you know, not that I'm not putting that down, like voice actors do incredible work, but like I think as soon as it became more about like full body performances and stuff, you saw like, you know, these developers and stuff getting really hands on with how to direct and all that stuff. And I think it's kind of gone hand in hand with that, and that's now why you're seeing, you know, these kind of huge games, kind of what Adam said, of going, okay, like we've got the Indiana Jones license, but we're not going to remake the Temple of Doom as a game. We're going to put our, you know, our chops on this video game, sorry, on this IP, but give our own video game story, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like as you say there, it's almost inherently because of, and this is just going back to what I was saying before about our industry growing and becoming like more mature as it is as we keep going. It's like we've got bigger studios now with more people in, which means we can almost we can act like some of these studios can, and it's the same in film as well. You have all of them from massive studios all the way down to indie filmmakers. We've very much got that now, where it's like the big studios can have a director who is in charge of, you know, a narrative director or a performance director, as well as, and they can focus on all that stuff. Whereas, and you almost sometimes have cinematic directors as well, cinematic directors, or and then you have, you know, gameplay directors, game directors themselves, animation directors, all of these different people who are involved in the process of it, much like it would be on like a feature film where you would have the director, writer, DP, all of that other stuff. We've definitely moved more into that. And then it's the same with indies who do all of that stuff themselves as well.
Yeah, I think it's probably come from, as well as that, I think these larger IPs have got a trust in games now, as whereas before it was probably not seen as like, oh, they're not going to do a good version of it, and there's going to be this and there's going to be this problems, and basically not trusting them to go like, yeah, well, you know, we want to make the game version of it, which means we're going to have to create some new stuff which wasn't in it before. And it was probably only TT that was consistently, just like TT Games with the Lego games, which was consistently releasing a tie-in with it that was allowed to go a bit, you know, outside of the bounds of that stuff, which I think comes from the Lego itself, because they've always had this sort of humor that they've been allowed to do.
Yeah, totally. I think what you said there as well about that kind of trust of like, you know, the outer world looking at games going, okay, they're actually, you know, oh, they look like films now, therefore we should respect them, which I think is kind of awful. But I get why that's happened. And I think it's quite funny because I think there's so many games, especially like from like the 90s, like early 2000s, like that era, there were so many games that were obviously the developers working on these were kind of 80s kids, and like, you know, all of their games they were making, they were all like ripping off like great 80s movies and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like you kind of look at Halo 1, and if, you know, James Cameron didn't make Aliens, Halo 1 wouldn't exist, because like everything's ripped. Like if Sergeant Johnson's just a pawn, like the dropship from Aliens is just the Pelican and stuff. So it's quite funny how like games ripped so much off like movies. And it's kind of became this weird like give and take cycle between the two mediums now.
Yeah, it's great. So before we Halo, the buzzword, but before we get into like more modern versions, I see Jack wants to unload on that one. But before we get into like modern versions of like TV film adaptations games that we're going to look at, I'm going to take us back in very quick research of like where it all kind of started. I'm sure there were smaller ones before this, but you know, you're back in the 90s, you're on your Game Boy, everything's great, still going to the arcade, and then you're big Nintendo fan, Super Mario Brothers, you love them, and then you've heard that there's going to be a live action film of the Super Mario Brothers coming out in 1993. And then it's the most terrifying rendition of a Goomba you've ever seen in your life. I remember watching this as a kid, and I was like, I haven't watched it since then, and I still think it was okay, but it was probably pretty bad. But I don't know what that says about me or whether it was good for kids. But yeah, that's how we started it all.
I generally think if that game, sorry, if that film came out like maybe like 10 years ago, like it would probably be received like in a completely different way than it was. Because I think people like were just happy it was a movie, but kind of hated it when it came out. But I think like now with like meme culture and stuff, I think people would kind of dig it in a weird way. Because like I saw someone recently, like obviously everyone's be like getting into AI art and stuff. Like people being like, putting in whatever IP and like doing it with like 80s movie like filters on it stuff to kind of.
I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, and like someone just literally grabbed screenshots of that Mario movie and pretended it was like done with it, and everyone was just like, "Fucking hell, this is horrifying." It's like this is what the film looks like.
Oh man, yeah, it was. If you should go watch it, that's basically all we're saying. You should go watch it because we'll talk about the other Mario Bros that's coming out. Yeah, we'll come out that later. But it kind of all started with basically renditions of sort of arcade games and stuff like that, because the next couple of years you've got the Mortal Kombat stuff, which has kind of become like a cliche, cult classic, releasing Mortal Kombat films now, and then Street Fighter, and then obviously sort of a bigger one that came about was Pokemon, and all the Pokemon films are amazing, but there's that, which is sort of the big one that was very successful coming from game into that. And we move into like the 2000s, which is when this starts to really boom. And when I was looking into it, I was like, oh man, there's a lot of like actually decent ones, not necessarily like blockbuster amazing films, like but there's a couple of film series that are very like Tomb Raider, Silent Hill, Resident Evil. There's all of this sort of mid 2000s where gaming was very booming with all the new console wars between Xbox and Sony, and it's like, oh, look at all these different franchises getting blown up into film. So it comes about really fast.
Yeah, to like obviously as well, like to varying degrees of success. Like
100%.
Like I remember I haven't seen them in a long time, but I remember the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider movies being like pretty serviceable. Like they weren't like it wasn't high art, but like kind of goofy action adventure movies. I remember they were pretty good, and I think casting her as Lara Croft was like absolutely inspired.
100%.
Yeah, and I thought they were kind of okay. And then on the flip side, you had like Doom, which I don't know if you've seen Doom, but it is like
is that the Dwayne Johnson one?
Yes, yeah.
I remember that one.
It's not good, but there is one scene in it, and I think it's like the climax of the movie when he gets like the BFG. And I'm sure from memory that it literally has like a really goofy like first person sequence where he's running around like shooting demons, and it just looks horrible. But you know what I mean? Like it's Doom. Like what are you adapting? Like you've got guns, you're shooting demons. Like really, I know I probably just offended Doom lorists out there who are going to tell me that Doom's really deep and everything. Apologies, but like how far wrong can you go? Like just make a kind of broy shooter like film, like action movie. Like how can you mess that up that much? But I don't know, man. They somehow did.
It's interesting to think about that one, because it's like because we don't know, we'll never know the intentions behind it, but the intentions behind it may very well have been the director or whoever was in charge of that film being like, oh, I actually really like Doom, and I want to pay homage to it in this way. Not only am I making a Doom film, but this is the way we're going to do it. And then it comes off just like almost like it's a piss take.
Yes,
Almost
yeah,
like it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. This is what the game looked like. Here you
yeah,
go, you nerds who like the game.
yeah.
We've made
It's
this
like it's like
when it may very well have been like, oh, I actually really like it as well, and I want to pay homage to it. Here it
yeah,
is, and then
yeah,
it
yeah.
comes out, and they're like, oh, everyone hates it.
I think they're like, you know, because I have like a weird love of like proper like schlocky movies that like to me like my favorite movies, and I can't really be asked to engage with anything like, you know, properly, is, you know, stuff like, you know, The Room, like Tommy Wiseau, like stuff of that ilk, like Neil Breen movies, when this director is set out to make something like really like poignant and like important, and they've just failed at like every stepping stone. Like something about that is, to me, it's so endearing to watch, and I think like you saw that kind of with a lot of these movies, like especially like Resident Evil, because they're like the actual game franchise is kind of camp and silly, but the movies are a different type of like camp and silly. Like I don't know if you've seen, I think it's the fourth Resident Evil movie, but there's a sequence near the end which genuinely, I like, if I was to describe it to you, you'd be thinking I'm just making it up on the fly. Like it's so outrageous. There's a bit when like a glass ceiling starts falling down while these like mutant zombie dogs are coming at her. She like flies through the air with a leap kick, manages to kick this like 2 meter shard of glass falling through the air, and it like skewers and decapitates these like zombie dogs. And it's all like presented like it's taken itself very seriously.
And
I mean, that seems perfectly realistic to me. I don't know
great
what
to laugh at. Like it's good fun, but it's like what's happening here?
Talking about the Resident Evil ones, it's like just thinking about them now. I've seen one of them, and I was just looking it up then. I think I saw Afterlife. I think it was, which is like the fourth one.
I think that's it.
But like, I think it might have been that one. It was one of them anyway. But it was like, I obviously knew about Resident Evil at the time and everything. And like my cousins were going to see it. They were like, "Yeah, do you want to come?" And I was like, "Fuck it, yeah, it's the fourth one." Like, it's not going to be like, I kind of know the stories anyway, so I kind of know what this is going to be like.
Yeah.
And then I go in and I'm like, "The fuck is this? Like, what is this?"
Yeah.
It was the wildest thing.
Yeah. Oh, I had an absolute whale of a time with it. Like I wanted to
I
like,
loved it.
cry in tears of joy from how like goofy it was. But like Christ Almighty, like there's something about something taking itself that seriously when it's inherently stupid is just brilliant. I love that. I love that stuff.
100%. I think it's an interesting thing with sort of this era of it, like this sort of mid boom of video game to film and TV adaptations, is that, I mean, not to overarch all of them, but you could describe most of them as bad. Like, and not like,
how dare you?
I know, I'm sorry with my big opinions that I've got here, but
no, you're right. You are right.
why do we think that's like? I think it's why is that why was that a thing? And I think part of it, in my opinion, may have been because we were still making games with big stories and meaningful stuff in it. I think that's an illusion that people like to put on games where they go like, it's only now that we've been making stories with films. Like, it's not
totally
true.
Agreed.
Like, you have Shadow of Colossus and all of these like great games that had really cool stories in them, but just because they were different back in the time, it wasn't seen that way. But I do think a lot of the like successful film or like more popular ones were the ones where it's very like gamey games. So like, Resident Evil's got a crazy story and stuff, but they're fairly ignored in that stuff. But like Tomb Raider and things like that, it's go get them, what I would describe as like gamey games where you just do whatever and it's stupid and it's fun and that kind of thing. So maybe it's interesting how they try to emulate that kind of thing in a film, and it just doesn't go down as well.
Yeah, totally. Because I think ultimately, like it is hard to adapt a game to a film because they are two separate mediums, and kind of what you said there with Resident Evil. Like as soon as something relies. It's like actual main joy of the thing is it's mechanical and it's how its systems work together and stuff. Getting that to work in like an hour and a half or a 2 hour like movie where that doesn't exist anymore, that interaction and that way of playing in that world and still coming out the other side, and that that vibe is intact, is super difficult to work at. But I think like we were kind of talking about Hitman at the start, and like they made like I think it's like 3 Hitman movies, maybe 2. And I think they've like had like 3 different guys playing Agent 47. And I think they're all kind of reboot and they're all standalone. I think I could be wrong with that, but they all like take themselves like super seriously. Kind of, and say at the start with Hitman, like it's not. I know Hitman's like elevator pictures, like it is kind of a serious. You're this like, agent top of his game. You can do all this stuff, but you are using stupid things in the environment to kill things, and that's the joy of that game. And like, how do you do that as a film without having the tone be like so disjointed and over? Like, do you know what I mean? And not feel like you're supposed to be taking it too seriously. Like, when does it become a comedy? Because I think if you were to do the stuff in Hitman, the game, as a film, it would end up like Jackass or something.
It'd just be Mr. Bean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it would be Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean,
what is that?
It sounds great.
It's the Robinson spy movie.
The what?
Johnny English.
Oh,
it would literally be Johnny English.
Yeah,
like that would be
Johnny English. That's absolutely correct. It's an interesting thing. You say, true. It's very true what you're saying there, Jack. It's like, I think what's interesting about it, and we're getting into the point now where, with ones that are coming out recently, like The Last of Us and things like that, where I think in a way it's all about which type of game you want to adapt, right? So for The Last of Us, it's like you've got these set characters, you've got this set story, you already know where everything's going. Whereas games like Hitman or even Resident Evil to an extent, or Tomb Raider, it's like rather than that, you will have like an archetype of these characters, and you can kind of take them whenever you want, almost like a what's it called, like a, I don't want to say Monster of the Week, but like an episodic format where it's like they go out and do something, they come back, and that's it. Whereas the ones like Last of Us and things like that have such a story already pinned down in them that yes, they have an interesting world and everything that you could build off from there, but the game itself is the narrative, not just everything that comes with that feeds into that. So
because it's,
I'm not saying it's an easier position to be in, because it's not, but
no, I think
it's an interest. It's how you want to adapt that, like you said.
I think you're right. I think, like, you know, if you look at Last of Us, it is by and large like a kind of set, almost like filmic structure to it. Like it has like the kind of like the 4-season motif with its storytelling. Like it does the kind of time jumps, and you know, that kind of works really well. But yeah, like it's telling one continuous story over like, you know, like a 20-hour thing. And obviously games did that. But I think the point you're like kind of getting at is that stuff like Tomb Raider or like Hitman especially, and I guess you could look at maybe like, you know, if they try to make like Dishonored into a game, like those games are more like focused on their like level to level scenario, if that makes sense. Like they do have the overarching story and they are telling it, but the main attraction for those games is normally like the level, like it's the one with the rainforest level, or like it's the Aztec temple bit. Do you know what I mean? And like, I don't think, you know, it's harder to choose of which bit you pick with that. Because, you know, it's, you know, who knows what the most iconic bit of Tomb Raider is? You could ask a lot of people and people can give you a much wider array of answers compared to Last of Us, when I think like it's more moments in the narrative that people kind of go, oh, that bit, that scene and that bit. So I think like as long as your characters are intact and they feel like they resonate with the original game versions of them, like as long as that's there and that story is roughly, the beats are there, you can't go too wrong with that format. I think it's when you don't keep those characters too aligned and you don't have that plot to keep kind of push those characters through as a film. That's when it starts going, okay, everything's open to interpretation, and we are adapting it. Let's go balls to the walls with it.
And you could go in the completely opposite direction with that, where it's like, and this is the thing that I've had an issue, and this is going away from games a little bit, but well, it still kind of counts actually, is the adaptation of The Witcher on Netflix.
Yeah, that definitely counts.
But they took that from the book, so it is more the book one. But then they went, but we're better than the famous author. We don't need to do any of this. So you could go in that direction where it's like, no, how about you just follow the books, because that's all anyone wants to see. Yes, you can do little bits here and there, fine, but just follow the books. And they went, we're not going to do that. And then Henry Cavill was like, I'm out then. Just like, it was. So you could go in that direction as well. And I think that's where, like Last of Us, for example, as we probably would keep going back to, because it's the one that's most recent in our minds. they have that structure and they have stuck to that for the most. They have stuck to that. They've made some changes, but the emotional beats that they're hitting are all still the same, so people aren't as annoyed with it. It's like they've given us, like, the latest episode, for example. I know, Adam, you haven't seen it yet. This would be episode 3 by this time. I don't know when this episode of our podcast is coming out. This would be the episode 3 of that. Like that, none of that stuff we had in the game at all. But it was I consider one of the best pieces of television I've seen in a while. Like, and I genuinely think that, not just from I love the game and I love the story, just genuinely the way that was filmed, the acting, the writing was just fantastic. But I think the core of that is because they had a lot of stuff to build off, and not only did they have the stuff to build off, they actually used it.
I think it's just having, like, making sure the characters are recognizable, what you're used to playing as. Like, it was going to happen, boys. Let's just go into it here. Let me have my minute about Halo TV show. Like, the reason, why that show was like instantly a turn off for anyone who is a Halo fan was because no character in that, and I'm not talking about like gender swaps or like race swaps and stuff. I don't care about that stuff. Do what you want with that. I'm talking about core character changes. So if you've got a character like Chief, who by and large is barely a character, especially in the first Halo game, man of few words, stoic guy. Like, you don't see his face in those games for a reason, because he was never built really as a character. He's just a conduit for the player's journey. Like, there you are. You're kind of experiencing things through his eyes. Cool, works. In your first episode of TV of making it, you're showing his face and you're making him have like very light, like MCU type quips. Like that, you're not adapting the character and trying to put him into a different medium. You're using him like as a conduit, like the game's using a conduit, but to attract people who like other stuff to like your show. And you're essentially just using it as like, you're just building a new character and you're just wallpapering it up with the IP. Or, and I don't think that's like, adaptations are open to whatever, right? You're adapting. I guess, you can do what you want with it, really. But I think if you're adapting it, you do have that kind of responsibility, is a heavy word, but like kind of what you said, Tom, about like the Witcher stuff. You do have to kind of respect the source material and go, okay, this works as a book or this works as a game. This doesn't. How do we go around working that? Or this little bit of that game was really cool. How should we explore that more? Because that would be a great episode of TV. Like, interesting. Like, but you need to kind of keep things correct to what those characters were for the game, and like not make sure like, why do people resonate with that, and don't like twist it so much to get new fans in on it. Like, that's all I ever saw with Microsoft's approach to the Halo TV show. Like, oh, this is for fans outside of Halo, like to bring them in. And if they like the show, they like the games. Meanwhile, there's millions of Halo fans sat there like, what the hell have you done to these characters in this world? Like, you've completely messed it up. And like, Halo's waited so long to have a full adaptation. Like, you go back to 2007, you had Neil Blomkamp like directing live action shorts for like marketing for Halo 3. You had like really cool like live action adverts for ODST. Spielberg was attached for absolute donkey's years. And to see it come to a point when it was getting like, a premiere, like, TV budget and stuff, and to see it just like, because it looks pretty good, the show, for most part. Like, Chief looks like Chief, vehicles look like they should, weapons look like they should. And it's just, you can just see it like slipping through your fingers about this opportunity they had, just for the sake of like appealing to broad appeal of like, let's get the MCU fans in, let's get people, who just like sci-fi in. And it's like, Halo's not, I don't think its story is like, it's not the most original thing in the world. Like I said before, it took Aliens from James Cameron, and it took Ringworld stuff from, I can't remember the sci-fi author's name now, and just mashed them together and went, here's our take on it. And I don't think you need to reinvent that, because it wears its influences on its sleeve so much. Just put it on TV as well. And if people like it, like, have you seen the sales figures of Last of Us at the minute since the show came out?
Yeah. I've heard about it.
Like 400% or something.
It's absolutely gone through the roof. And like, I didn't see any data for that with the Halo games, and there's way more Halo games than Last of Us games.
Exactly,
Oh,
but
that's
it's
true.
like it's a thing of, like you say, they've gone into it going, okay, we want to bring in this type of audience to
Yeah.
the Halo series,
Mhm.
rather than going, we're going to make this for fans of Halo, and in turn that will bring in other people.
Yeah,
because
Uh-huh.
we're going to make it because people have grown attached to Halo for several different reasons, and
Yeah.
they may have looked at it and gone, these people are not in it for the story, that's why we're going to change it.
Yeah.
When in fact,
A lot of people are, man.
if you keep the essence of it and you
Yeah.
keep that, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter,
No.
because people will go, my
No.
God, like people who have friends who don't play games or aren't into gaming will go, this is one of my favorite games ever. I absolutely love it. I know you're not into gaming, but watch the show.
Yeah.
And then that snowballs from there. I think that's how a lot of people are watching The Last of Us now, going, holy shit,
100%.
these are great. Let's
Yeah.
play the game.
I saw,
And you're going to bring people into gaming in
yeah.
that way, and it's like better for all of us. And it's
I
like,
s-
oh my God, just stick
I
to the
saw-
source. Sorry.
No, you mate,
Sorry,
I
mate.
totally agree. Like, I saw some developers from Naughty Dog. Obviously, they're absolute jazz because like Last of Us it's out as a TV show. It's hyped as hell, and everyone's loving it. And they were saying like, finally, like I can show my parents, and my parents can experience the thing I work on.
Yes, yes.
And I was like, oh my God, like I've never I've literally got like kind of weird kind of shivers thinking about that, because that is like I never thought about that for the longest time of going, do you know what? Like my mum and dad are aware of games and they know games and stuff, like they bloody hell bought me them growing up and stuff. But like the idea of my parents ever playing something I've made is like so beyond my thought process. I haven't even considered it. And to see like Naughty Dog, like devs being like, oh my God, like my parents can finally see like the thing I worked on in a sense. That's cool. Like that is
It's very cool. It is very cool. And I think it's with like Halo and The Last of Us and stuff like that. And a bit more about like why I think some games can be more successful than others. Hopefully it's like there's other factors in terms of like production costs and who's directing it and like who you get to writing in it and stuff like that. But outside of that, it was interesting when you were talking about The Last of Us and Halo and like Tomb Raider before that. I think in a game where you've got the world and the characters really fleshed out, but it's much more about like the more the game is about the player input itself, the harder I think it is to make a good like film and TV adaptation to it. Like, I don't imagine you could get a great Rust film. Like, how would you describe and do anything like that?
I reckon you just willed one into existence now, by the way.
Oh, also, as soon as I said that in my head, it was something.
But Matt, think about it, right? If you'd have said to someone, like, if you said to someone 2 years ago, you go, you know that game League of Legends? That's going to have one of the greatest TV shows adaptations, and you go, right, all right, I know nothing about that. But
I mean, you say that.
This is what I was saying to Jack though, and the reason behind that is they're not showing the gameplay. They're not playing a League of Legends match.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was going to get into.
There's also so much in-game lore that they have for characters' voice lines, and a lot of people love digging into that. Like in the game, you know that like Caitlyn and Jinx are sisters.
I did spoilers.
Right. and then they were like, yeah, here's a show. Here's their origin. Here's how they became the characters.
Yeah.
And like it's based in cities that you'll see on character pages. It's like, okay, these champions are from Zorn.
Right.
It's in the show.
Right.
Like, and it's
such an interesting way of going about it.
Yeah.
They've always had a
show.
big...
Here's all the backstories.
Yeah.
Here's how they became to be. People love that show.
Yeah, they've always had a big backing in their like lore characters and everything like that. And also it sort of comes with that as well, with the fact that like they've obviously, like you were saying, how are you going to make a video game based on that, a film based on that, because the video game is just so completely different to it. But I think that's partly like, as Adam was saying, they've got this big lore and world and characters built up already, where basically they're two separately detached objects. Like you don't, like a lot of people don't, some people will go and play that game and be like, yeah, I'm only playing Jinx or Volibear because I like their lore and stuff. Whereas most, like 98% of players, I would say, go into it because they're like, I like playing that hero.
I like annoying and playing duo.
Yeah, like I wouldn't watch Arcane and then go, oh, I can't wait to play a game of League of Legends.
I
Like
was
I've played that game and I bounced right off it. I'm not that into MOBAs, but like the
Right.
show itself, is really good. Like
Uh-huh.
so,
Yeah.
so it's so interesting, and I think this is kind of what I was going to talk about as well before. Is in a similar vein to that is Cyberpunk Edgerunners, where it was like
oh my God,
we've
I forgot about that
taken.
program.
See,
I
yeah,
loved that program so much.
program
Still
was
not
so
seen it.
good.
I haven't
It's
seen
so good. And
It's
what they
really
do
good.
is they do sort of a similar thing to Arcane, where it's like, cool, we've got the world of Cyberpunk, we've got the story of Cyberpunk 2077. This is set way before any of that stuff in the city with new and original characters. And what we're going to do, and I think this is something that was really, really clever from CD Projekt, was they went, we're going to release it, and at the same time, we're going to release an update to Cyberpunk 2077 where we update the world to reflect key narrative moments that happen in the show.
Wow! I
And
don't
I'm
know
like,
that.
that's
that
awesome.
is incredible.
That's
like you
like
can go,
yeah, that's
you
like
can go to-
transmedia done super well. Yeah.
you can go to like points where characters of like fought, points where characters met. You can get the characters' clothes. You can do all like it's like I was like I've seen like cross media stuff before, but not in that way. It's
Yeah, that's
so
really
clever.
That's amazing. Yeah, yeah. I think you know, there's probably an argument to be made that you know the adapting like a game into like an animation, especially like an animation like series, is probably like less of a jump to do with like a full film. I don't know if that's just because like visually speaking, you know, games are probably closer to like, you know, 3D animation and like 2D animation just by kind of their mediums, or something about those mediums allow for a lot more like playfulness just by like their visuals and so, or at least like cognitively people are willing to go along with, you know, more kind of goofy gamey themes because it's like anime. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong by the way, but maybe that leap isn't it's kind of less of a, you know, a jump for people to kind of do.
No, I think so. I think it definitely is. And what comes with that as well is we were talking about before, like, how games have been easier to come to film and they've gotten stuff like that now. And I do think that has partly come from the technology that we have in games where you're able to have live action versions of games and it doesn't feel so jarring. Like if you imagine The Last of Us was a PS1 game, everyone's got 2 pixels as a head and things, and then you then watch this like super 8K like version of it. Don't get me wrong, you'd still be sick, but it might be a bit like, there's something a bit odd about this. But, you know, it's that kind of thing where I think because you're seeing it.
The weird one, and I think, you know, kind of based on what we said at the start, do you not think it's, you know, this is probably a mixture of everything we've been talking about? So what's a game that was old, so look like you just said, has a huge like movie-like narrative, but is also like super mechanically focused?
Oblivion.
And has never got a video game adaptation.
I want an Oblivion TV show.
I mean, the thing is, though, with Oblivion, it's
Metal Gear Solid, man. Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, Metal Gear Solid is
and it's never made the jump. And it's been in development for like, what, like 2012 or something? It's
in Oscar Isaac's tied as playing Snake.
It's been rumoured. It's like, it's been directed by the guy who made Kong, whose name escapes me now. But he's been attached since like 2014 or something, I think. And it's like, can you adapt Metal Gear Solid? Like, where do you start? Like, what's the tone? Do you make that like a kind of, you know, spy thriller based on nuclear deterrence, or do you go? There's a guy called Solid Snake.
You do it in the same like. The first thing you do is you call Kojima and you get them involved. Like that's the thing I was like saying about before. The reason why Last of Us done so well is because they've got Neil Druckmann involved.
100%.
Because they've got him on there, he can go, cool. I know all about this, and I wrote a lot of this, and like I know the gameplay that went into it, so I know the moments that we can stretch out. Same with Kojima, right? You get him involved. He goes, here's the main beats that we need to hit, and here's how we think we can maybe, you know, stretch out those gameplay sections.
Yeah,
that's it. I mean, the Last of Us museum scene in the second episode, it felt like I was playing it.
It did feel
it was
like
so
the game,
close to
it
like.
was.
I think that's the best it was so weird. Maybe it's just because it's more vivid in my mind, but it was so close to what it felt like playing the game
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
any other
totally.
scene in that show.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to do that, you've got to get. I
Yeah.
mean, this is a best example of it is to get the actual creators involved. Same
Yeah.
with
Makes sense.
same with if they're going to do the God of War series. Like get Corey Barlog and get Eric Williams involved. Get them involved in it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I hope they are.
Totally.
Speaking of Kojima, Tom, they did announce in December that they're doing a Death Stranding film.
I mean,
They did.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I mean, I can see that. The last.
I think I missed
Oh
that.
yes, 3 hours of Sam just walking across the wasteland.
the last cutscene in that is like 45 minutes anyway. So
I was
it's
about
like,
to say. I mean,
I love that game. I love that game to pieces.
But yet again, like this is a really good example though, because like Death Stranding, I love it too. Just for the record, like it's very it's very mechanical and like play based. You have the big amazing filmic cutscenes and story bit, but like 80 to 90% of that game is still just getting your backpack on and walking across Iceland. Well, America, what looks like Iceland. So I'm very intrigued to see what that film looks like. Because is it essentially going to be like these amazing, like acted, really crucially directed like scenes, and then it's just like walking montages?
Oh my god, though!
With low raw playing. Like here you go again.
Here's the way you get me into that, right? It says that, and then it says produced by A24, and I'm like, it's going to be perfect. Holy shit, it's going to
That's
be perfect.
basically
like,
half of the Green
2
Knight.
hours. Exactly. You do it like that. Perfect.
I love that. I love that.
I think we're like just from this conversation as well, we're instantly falling into what I think is one of the biggest pitfalls of like game to adaptations is you try so hard to get some element of the gameplay in the film.
Yes.
Like you don't need to do that. You need to go on the world and the characters, and if that's got a good strong grounding, then you don't need to do it. I mean,
that's true.
Everyone, we all as gamers, like, and if you loved a franchise, you would love to see bits of it go in. So like I'll throw it slightly onto a different thing. Like as you were mentioning, Jack, of like, oh, which ones would you see? Like, I think for me, I would love to see like a proper. I mean, Henry Cavill's going to be in 4K. That's a great thing that's going to be happening, hopefully. But I'd love to see a Gears of War, like proper Gears of War TV show where it's all like different parts of it, or like before the resurgence and things like that. There'll be so much sick stuff. There's so much lore and so much world there that you could do, and a lot of that program wouldn't be necessarily like every single fight you're seeing emergence holes and you're throwing grenades in and shit like that. It would be much more of them walking around and talking, and then the Krill appear and things like that.
Yeah.
Some of the game
that would be.
Oh, it'd be amazing. Like that krill level and stuff like that would be amazing. But you need to get like a little bit of the gameplay, but not a lot. Like they've got to curb stomp someone at least once in the TV show.
But I think in terms of games like that are inherently just shooters, a lot of films tie in action scenes anyway. Like that, so I think it would fit quite well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think on your point there, Matt, I think the struggle is what do you do if a game doesn't have like characters, so to speak. Like, Mario's not a great example because I think Mario's premise is kind of like, like fairy tale storybook vibe, isn't it? It's like basic save the princess stuff. So maybe that's a bad example because there's like an inherent like age-old narrative in there, like wherever your stance on that is anyway. But I think you struggle when it's a game like, I'm talking like original Doom, where like your basic thing is that hell's kind of invading like Mars on a facility. You're just a guy and you're shooting stuff and getting more guns. It's like, do you go John Wick with it? Like, John Wick, he is a character, and I know he got fleshed out in the sequels, but the first film, John Wick, is essentially an idea, right? Like, there's not much to his character. He's like, all you get is this like great world building device. I don't know if there's a name for it, but you learn John Wick's character through criminals like knowing his name and calling the Baba Yaga and being scared of him and stuff, and he gets his reputation built up through other characters. But himself is kind of just a bit of one note. He's just shit hot at killing people. And I think he's great. He's a great candidate for a video game character.
100%.
You know what I mean? Because
Well, that's the thing,
there's not much to him. He's just good at killing, and in the
Well, that is
game, you're
the Doom guy.
incentivized to kill shit. Exactly, yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. It's the silent
definitely see that.
protagonist, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
how do you make a adaptation when the main character is a silent protagonist?
Yeah,
Like when they don't really have a character, as it were.
yeah.
Like
It's-
it's
yeah,
like,
like,
and usually with those, or I mean, it's different for like RPG stuff, because RPG stuff you make your own character, and although they could be silent in a way, you do have some, like with most RPGs they do have a fleshed out world, so you go, cool, we just make a story in this world with original characters, but we keep everything grounded into the world. But when it's a game that's like for, I'm gonna try and think, like Half-Life, right? Like,
Perfect,
you've got
yeah.
Gordon Freeman, right? But he's not really a character. He's just a vessel that the player uses to interact with the world.
Yeah.
How do you then adapt that and make him a character when there's no really base to go off?
This is kind of back to that Halo thing, what I said. Like, Chief got chattier with other sequels, and I think the way he's written in Halo 2 is like my favorite, because he only says things when he needs to, but like it's written so well, and it's like it's not goofy action movie, it's like kind of well written, kind of, you know, sci-fi epic, but with a bit of like humor to it. I think it's really well done. But yeah, like Gordon Freeman's a perfect example, because it has like the John Wick kind of background to it, of like, you know, roughly who you are through the world building of going through like Black Mesa, and then in the first game of, you know, you're like a scientist and stuff, and like Half-Life 1's premise is just you're going to work and shit goes wrong. And I think that's genius as a jumping off point, because it gives you enough to buy into the world, and also roughly the role you kind of inherit from like just even a subconscious point of view. And then you kind of get to it and you're just getting guns and shooting shit. Yeah. But if they were to adapt that into a film, how would you find like Gordon Freeman's voice, and what would the direction be to your actor? Like, so we just need you to be like, just kind of grumble a bit when people say things to you, and like just not
like crowbar.
And
then just start hitting things.
Pick up the crowbar and like communicate through like knocking things on the wall and stuff. Like, what do you do there?
Because you fall into the trap then of, like you say, with the Halo stuff, right? You could just go, you know, it's the opening of Half-Life. I think it's Half-Life 2, isn't it? Where the guy throws the thing on the floor and goes, pick up that can.
Yeah.
And you're like, you do that, and then the character's like, whoa, I didn't expect this. Like, you know, it's like, wow, you're instantly unlikable.
No, I can't do that.
What was that film?
Awful shit.
That action film that was all third person.
Hardcore Henry.
Yeah, that Half-Life.
Actually, that's. I mean,
dude, that's Half-Life.
That film, I enjoyed that film.
Did he talk in that?
I don't think he does.
Yeah, dude, that's Half-Life. It's just him, crowbar, going around doing shit.
I don't think he does. Does
the protagonist talk in Hardcore Henry?
I genuinely don't think he does.
That's the point.
Is it?
He like does. They lean into it, right? Where it's like it's like the first person, and he's like this all the time. He's like doing like, and they lean into it, and it's great, and it works. But like, it doesn't work for if you're adapting something that's a bit more that has a silent protagonist, but is a bit more.
It's like Gordon, it's like Gordon. No, they're here, and he just sat there like.
No. It'll be his crowbar just going.
Just doing thumb gestures and crowbar gestures. I mean, it's totally all achievable. That's the thing. Like, even just to sat here like talking about this stuff, it is all really achievable. And
I'm
like
not
to
sure
go back,
I agree based on what we've just said that making Half-Life.
I don't think it's achievable. Like,
anyone can dream.
You could get everything else right, but it would hinge on how you do Gordon. How you do Gordon Freeman. It would hinge. You might get everything else nailed, and then the minute you're like, we're going to cast Chris Pratt as Gordon Freeman, you go, okay.
Well,
no,
on the Chris Pratt segue, I did want to talk about.
I'm so good at segues.
The new Mario stuff, because I know you were saying how like it does have that classic story, and it does. Like, I'm sure they'll throw in basically just this how to make a film story, and part of it, right? But that's another one where you're on about these like silent characters. Now, obviously, like Luigi and Mario and Peach and Bowser and stuff, they're not silent. They've said stuff, and we've heard them say things, but they have their taglines, and they do all of these things, and they talk in a specific way. And like, I'll watch that film, but I just can't get over it. I watched the
it's
trailer
weird.
again recently,
Yeah.
and like Jack Black as Bowser, great. I think he's done a great job as that. But also at the same time, he hasn't, because it's an impossible task. Bowser
is.
shouldn't talk. Like that's just not the way it is.
You shouldn't be stringing like perfect sentences together. But I mean, they've done it. But I mean, like, so, I think secretly with this Mario movie, they're just trying to like pave the way to get like live action Waluigi in, and then they'll figure that one out. Because
Oh yes, please.
if they can get bloody like, is Wario in it as well, or is it just Bowser? They're not putting
I think
Wario
it's
in it.
Bowser.
Right.
Who would you cast as Wario
What,
and
as
Waluigi?
Wario and Waluigi? Oh God.
See, that's a question right
That's
there.
hard.
Yeah,
well, judging by
that's
the rest of the
impossible
cast,
task.
it's probably solvable by like looking at the rest of the cast, though.
Yeah, it's an MCU film.
Keanu Reeves.
Benedict Cumberbatch as well, Luigi. Final answer.
That would actually
He does
That's
all the mocap for it as well. He goes for Andy Serkis.
He's doing the
that
old
would-
John Lennon walk, that leg kick.
I think that would actually be pretty good, you know. But I mean, maybe that's what we'll end up doing. Maybe it'll end up literally going full circle. We start with Super Mario's live action, and then we get a good Super Mario live action, and then we just never make a.
I was
film
about to say
adaptation
that suggests that no game is ever going to be adapted ever again.
Yep,
And
that's what
that would be so sad, because there are so many games that you can think of that, like, and this is what I'm talking about, like indie games as well. Like some of those have some of the most incredible stories ever, and I think would be adapted really well, but will probably never get.
No.
I mean, on that,
But
like, it's not a film or TV necessarily, but someone did it on YouTube, and they did this amazing, like, I think it's like 15, 18 minutes, like, TV show rendition of Papers, Please. And it was
Yes,
I saw that.
Really good.
Like,
Yeah.
just look up like Papers, Please live action, and it will come up. But it's like, it's really good. And it's just like that exact kind of stuff. And that is a completely silent protagonist, and like, and the story it's based on your actions completely. So, but that one is so good. It's really good. And I think we could do so much more with that stuff. And I think, for me personally, I think TV's the best way to go about it, because you can, even if it's a serial one, you can still do an episodical one where you can do like bits of the universe as different points. Like, I'll go back to this, like, and I'll pass it round to like a game that we all want, to like get passed into a TV series. And I think I was kind of joking with it. I mean, Gears of War was definitely one of them, but I kind of was joking with it. But I genuinely think it could actually be pretty good. Would be either like Oblivion or like a Fallout game, because I genuinely think there's enough like worlding and character stuff.
Fallout's happening. Amazon are doing a Fallout, sure. Yeah.
Then absolutely.
Again,
you
you do the same thing you did with Arcane, and they did with Arcane and Cyberpunk. You go, this is an amazing world, let's make our own thing, rather than trying to do the game's story.
Yeah,
absolutely,
totally.
100%.
Yeah.
So
I think, Sorry, Matt, go on.
I was just going to pass it on to you.
Mine is, and I know straight away that I'll get bombarded with the usual. It's been rumored for years; it's never going to happen. But I think if there's a way to, like, I think it would need the new BioShock game to come out first to get people talking about BioShock again. But I refuse to believe that you couldn't make a great BioShock TV show that shows Rapture going to shit. And it shows like Andrew Ryan thinking of building Rapture and how it's going to be done, showing the downfall of it. I'm not saying it leads up to like the plane from the first game, but like leading up to events of like that. Is it New Year 1959 or whatever it is? I think when everything went shit. Like do like I don't know what it would be, like a 10, 15 year time frame or however long Rapture was a thing for, of like concept of Andrew Ryan, like how he got like radicalized his political views and stuff, how he kind of went away, did that. You have these great episodes of like people pushing science and art and everything different directions. You have like, all the kind of Fontaine stuff going on, and then it kind of ends in absolute shit. And the back last 3 episodes becomes like a slasher horror movie almost. And it starts off like Boardwalk Empire, but it ends like a horror movie. I refuse to believe that wouldn't be a great TV show.
You could do what Arcane did, because they released 9 episodes,
Yeah.
but every 3 episode was like a little mini arc. So
Yeah,
it was like
yeah.
the first episode was them as kids in the
Oh, that'd
past.
be great. Yeah, that'd
So
be
like
great.
you could do that. You could do the first section as the rise of Rapture.
Yeah,
The second
yeah.
the second segment could be like how Rapture is on the daily basis, and then
Yeah,
the start
exactly.
of the downfall, and then
Yeah,
Act
yeah.
3
Yeah,
is
and my I'll go one further step with it as well, Matt. My director of choice would be Guillermo del Toro as well.
Yes.
That man,
Yes.
that man
Mm.
has the vibes. He has the the dedication to like physical sets and practical effects where possible. I just think he'd nail it. And I mean,
Still sad.
if you look at the trailer for Nightmare Alley and Shape of Water, you can cut those trailers together, slice them, and it's practically a Bioshock trailer anyway.
No, 100%. Yeah.
So that's mine for sure.
Still
I
sad
think- I
about
think I
Halo,
would tag,
Hellboy 3.
Hellboy 3.
I'm saying I'm still sad that I never got to do it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Ron
I
Perlman
think
is like
I-
80 though.
I think I'd tag
What would,
Edgar Wright as my Fallout, or
Who is that?
Oblivion.
Edgar Wright.
Yeah,
Edgar Wright
An
Fallout.
Oblivion Edgar Wright TV show. It's like
Stop
based
right
in
there,
the lore.
criminal Scott.
Yeah, and it's actually like you going.
Close up cameras of sword hilts and stuff all the time.
Oh my god, that would actually be so good.
Sorry,
Think
Tom.
about how good that would be.
It
I
just
was
came
just
to
going
my
to say,
head.
Adam,
I had to say it.
Adam, what's yours?
What's my what?
Because I need more time to think, basically.
What's
Your
your
game to
dream
turn into a
game
TV show.
to live action
No.
adaptation?
I don't think I got a dream one, but I was kind of sad that the Sly Cooper
Ah,
thing fell
yeah.
through, because that was kind of a beloved franchise. But
I'd love to have seen how far along that was.
Yeah, did you see like the trailer that they did?
Yeah.
It could have been pretty interesting, but I think it was the same studio that did the Ratchet and Clank film.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
performance of that, it probably killed it, didn't it? Which is a shame.
That's one thing I was kind of excited for, but I was just looking at the list of all the upcoming stuff, and kind of interested to see if we could guess whether you think it will come out, or if it'll be good if it does come out.
What?
All these films. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
a Gran Turismo film in the
Yeah,
works.
they're making that. Yeah, like Orlando Bloom's attached to it, I think. Yeah.
Is it just going to be a fast
Yeah.
film with Orlando Bloom?
Well,
hope so.
apparently it's based on the real life story of a kid who grew up playing Gran Turismo and was like, I want to be a race car driver in real life. And then he actually became one.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty sick.
Yeah. Sounds pretty cool. What about you, Tom?
Probably Among Us.
For fuck's
No.
sake.
No. My actual one.
Please.
I'm a little. Maybe I'm a little Edgar Wright Among Us. Maybe. No, I'm a little bit torn here. I think it might be. It's either Undertale, because it's one of my favorite video game stories. It'd be very interesting to adapt. I think Del Toro would probably do a pretty good job with that, because it kind of has the Pan's Labyrinth sort of vibes with that. But another one is Red Dead 1 and 2.
Oh, totally.
I think
totally.
give them the Last of Us treatment. I think that's a
TV
win.
show or film?
TV show.
It would have to be a
I think
TV show.
it's-
There's not. You need more time.
True.
Like
Yeah,
Red Dead
yeah.
Redemption 2, like for all its flaws in design and things like that, and it did have a few, I still think it has one of the best narratives in video games in a while.
I will.
Like,
I
it's
will. Yeah.
so
Pretty. I was thinking of there. Like I was showing Lucy like a bunch of like clips on my PS4 of it when I was playing Red Dead 2, and I was like absolutely howling at some of like just like weird like physics with like the ragdolls and stuff. But I forgot like just how bloody like compelling like Arthur Morgan is. And, like what a good job the like I can't remember the actor's name, but
Roger Clark.
Roger Clark. That's it. Yeah. Like.
Yeah.
The performance is just, especially like the kind of latter chapters of that game, so bloody good.
The scene, everyone's played it, right?
I never finished it.
Do you mind spoilers?
No.
The
Spoiler
scene at the
warning.
end, where spoiler warning for Red Dead 2. Go play it. It's been like fucking 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Like where he's lying down and looking at the sunrise as he dies. I'm like, Jesus Christ!
It's so
That
good.
is
It's so well done.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Good.
not really a spoiler because he's not in the first one, which is the sequel.
He could have rode off into the sunset. You never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew. Like, you're playing that game the whole time. You're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I know he's going to die. Like, don't get too attached. Don't get too attached to Arthur Morgan. He's going to die. He's going to die.
And they kill your horse as well.
And then I'm like
Yeah.
crying at the end. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake.
That game
It's great.
it really got me. And like like you said, it's got its flaws and things, but the world is so crazy, and like the amount of
That's
stuff.
wild.
Like we could do a whole episode on the NPC AI programming that they did for that game.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
they literally build a train track, like literally like nailing.
Yeah,
in
I saw that recently.
across
Yeah.
the whole country. It's like, what the hell is this
It's
game?
insane.
man?
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
insane.
crazy. I could totally see that though. It would be like, because I spent a good probably total like 45 minutes to an hour of my life just
Mhm.
waking up in the camp, making myself coffee on the fire pit, drinking
Yep.
the coffee.
Oh,
and then
I love doing that. I did that every day for a while. It was so good.
it's so
It's
funny.
so good.
It's
Yeah.
really
I
good.
have a bit of a curveball to end on, but I guess it's kind of similar to what we've been talking about. Of obviously, kind of award seasons just kind of been and gone and stuff. Do you think we'll ever see a video game to movie adaptation that'll win a Golden Globe?
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know
my
when.
my
I think.
answer. Oh,
Sorry,
Tom.
go on, Matt. No, you go. You go.
Oh my god!
Oh,
I
so
think my
so British right at the end.
my answer would be yes, but I think it's going to take a couple more Last of Us and Arcanes.
Exactly.
Right.
That was exactly what I was going to say. I think Last of Us. Yeah, Last of Us especially. I include Arcane and Cyberpunk Edgerunners, but they're not as mainstream as Last of Us is getting.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is the start of where people go, oh shit, we could actually adapt these well.
Yeah.
And they'll be seen as the same
good.
vein eventually as adapting a book.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as though, not to go on too much about it, but to just kind of dead quick to end on, I guess, is it's interesting that Last of Us came out 10 years ago, right? Like 2013. And, you had a lot of reviewers at the time, like 10 out of 10s, like this is important, amazing, but, one of the best games ever made, blah, 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 blah. Like there was a review, I can't remember the reviewer now, and I'm pretty sure he said like gaming's had its like Citizen Kane moment of like, for context, like Citizen Kane was like the movie that kind of made movies. And it's interesting if the Last of Us TV show will have a similar effect on video game adaptations. So now it's like, okay, like, wow, everyone's really amazed by this thing. Here's the TV version. They're like, oh, we need to book our ideas of adaptations. Like games are telling these type of stories, and they're winning like 5-star reviews like across seasons.
Exactly
like
right.
we need to look at our franchise that we own. Like, would Ubisoft do it next? Like Ubisoft did Assassin's. We didn't talk about the Assassin's Creed movie. Just realized.
Oh my god, the Assassin's Creed movie.
Like, will Ubisoft do it?
Didn't see it.
Yeah,
It was
the action for that film.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? Like, it'll be interesting to see other companies kind of looking at their portfolio of IP and being like, we need our Last of Us. Just like they've all done with their games. We need our Last of Us. Now it's going to be, we need our Last of Us TV show. Like, it'd be interesting.
I think it's only a good thing for every person involved. We just get better stories from it. We get more eyes on games. It becomes a better medium.
That's it for me.
So
100%.
I'm super happy with it.
Yeah. Nice.
100%, man. I do think it could be that sort of like, maybe not The Last of Us, but the next one. And The Last of Us was what sort of stirred it on, was this sort of watershed moment, like you were saying, for more of these to come in. I do hope that doesn't lead to a scenario where we're making games with the plan to make a TV film adaptation.
That's interesting, actually. It goes in the complete opposite way.
Do you know what? I think you've nailed that, because there was a time when I'm trying to think of an era. It was when like MCU was really getting big, and there was a few small comics from like Image Comics that were kind of getting TV deals. And in my opinion, there was a time where comics were definitely getting written to be TV shows. And what you've just said there is like scared the hell out of me.
Cancel everything. Let's all stick to our own mediums. I don't want this anymore.
Just keep them as games. Just keep games as games.
We ended on this like super high note of like, we're going to have so much cool content with games, and I just absolutely just slammed down to it. But I do think it's going to be
that's existential. Yeah. Okay.
We'll have some
We'll
great
see.
stuff. But
Yeah, we'll see. Put a pin in it. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Awesome.
wrap this thing up for us. But yeah, I mean, it's been super interesting on this stuff, and I do think there's going to be a lot more conversations to be had about this in the future. So yeah, any of your guys' thoughts or anything, let us know. We'd love to hear any of your responses from all of this stuff and get some conversations going with it all. We've got some exciting stuff coming up. I think the next one is going to be a bit of a longer, deeper dive episode into should we tease it, some sort of survival horror genre stuff. We're going to be doing some sort of deeper dive into that. It's going to be very exciting. And unless there's any sort of closing thoughts,
Tell us your game that you want to see adapted in the comments.
Yes. Yeah, give us that.
I really want to know.
Yeah. Someone give me a Titanfall 2 movie pitch.
Tell us your favorite. Do the same thing that we did. Tell us your favorite game and the director you want attached.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's sick. 100%. Love that.
We do want to see that.
Exactly.
Nice.
So, on your homework task, we're going to end it here.
we'll be reviewing them in the next episode.
Exactly.
Hey, if we get enough of them, we could.
Generally, we'll do this last section of the episodes as mail order return homework.
We will act them out in the next episode.
So this is a call to all our 112 subscribers. Get on.
Hey, we get 112 responses. That's the entire episode. Come on.
Come on. Maybe not that too many people, but Right. So we have been Rules of Play. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.